Today is a wonderful day. We have had two other iterations of the show, Elevated Dialogue. And today, my partner and I, and you look marvelous, Evelyn Sakia. How are you today?
I'm quite well, and thank you so much for acknowledging how I look.
Have to.
And you look absolutely handsome yourself.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about leadership.
Yeah.
And leadership's an important topic.
Mhm.
And for those listeners and viewers out there, a leader is someone who has the ability to influence others. And I suggest, and I'm sure Evelyn agrees with me, that all of us in our communities, in our homes, at work, in the philanthropic and humanitarian work that we do, we're all leaders. So we're going to talk about a lot of different depths of leadership, but we're going to get in the weeds a little bit. We're going to look under the hood a little bit of leadership. And today we decided to start with a quotation from William Shakespeare. He said, "Some leaders are born, some leaders achieve leadership, and some leaders have leadership thrust upon them." So as we go through this show with you, we want you to think about what type of leader are you, and then we're going to give you some tidbits about some traditional styles of leadership, as well as some that are trending and cutting edge. But before we do that, my partner and I decided that we would talk a little bit today about leadership in the context of some ships that have to be navigated. So Evelyn, would you like to lead us in that conversation?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great opening. And again, thank you all for listening and tuning in. And again, each week that we come together, we would like to elevate our conversation, our dialogue, so that you're able to make the appropriate adjustments that you need in your life. Again, no one can tell you how you can lead your life, but we can just give you some substance and some additional knowledge that will help you obtain what it is, your possibilities, your dream, what you desire to do, and alleviate some of those fears. So I already opened and told you we're going to talk about leadership, and we're going to start with the ships. And there are many ships that's on your journey of leadership. And the first one we want to begin with is fellowship. So when we think of fellowship, that comes to many of us in a variety of ways. And one thing about fellowship is the people that surround you as you are leading, the people that's a part of your team. And many times they're chosen by you, and other times they just come to you. Sometimes you just meet them. But the universe on many occasions gives us what we need. And then on other occasions, you have to choose what it is that you desire. Even though certain ones might come to you, you might have to eliminate them again.
Right.
Every time we have our dialogue and our previous dialogues, we're going to continually involve everything that we talked about in the previous sessions with what we're talking about today. So fellowship is instrumental because this is your team. These are the people that's going to help you gain to the level of leadership that you desire. And when people come together, they are on different levels. We're all not the same. They're going to bring different types of diversity to the table, which means not diversity only of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or religion, or things of that nature.
And those are important.
Yes, those are very important. But let's not forget diversity of thought, because that's very key too.
Mhm.
You're going to get hopefully diversity with all the areas that I just mentioned, but also thinking, your experience
Right.
is also impacting you as a leader, especially if you choose to bring that forth in all that you are doing. So fellowship, first key, very important. Who's going to be on your team? Who are you going to be working with? Where are you trying to go to? What are you trying to obtain? And those that's in the fellowship have to have a common mission.
So I have a question for you, because I
Yes.
know you're a fan of this genre. Lord of the Rings. Tell me
Yes.
about that correlation or nexus to fellowship.
Fellowship of the Ring. Yes. I do love Lord of the Rings because of the message. And that message from that movie is what we are discussing today. That fellowship that came about with unique individuals, or you had the humans, you had a king, you had a dwarf, you had an elf, you had a hobbit, and you had a variety of individuals coming together but being united for a cause, for a mission.
Right.
And that's what this is all about, being united. Do we understand what it is? What are we trying to obtain so that we can all be on the same path?
Right.
And again, even though you're on the same path, doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. Because remember, they had trials and tribulations.
They did.
And as we know in life as individuals, not many of us obtain the level of skills or wear the crown that we desire to wear without some obstacles being placed in our way.
Absolutely.
You know, we learn from these things, which is always a good thing.
It is a good thing. And part of the fellowship and the difficulty they experienced, and as you were talking, I also thought about Remember the Titans, which was two groups that were diametrically opposed for racial reasons.
Yes.
And then eventually they came together as a fellowship to join one team. And for those of you out there that have been athletes, you understand what fellowship means. And you don't always get along with your teammates, but you know there's one singular goal. And we introduced a concept a few weeks ago called respectful contrary, which means you may not always agree with people who are part of your fellowship.
Right.
You may disagree with them, but again, if you can embrace respectful contrary, then it's a good thing. And that's a higher level than agree to disagree. So
Yes,
Evelyn,
it is.
let's talk about relationships as it relates to the leadership conundrum or the leadership continuum.
Now, the fellowship, yes, we got that down, hopefully,
Mhm.
the different individuals that you meet along the way. But relationship and relationship building,
Mhm.
that is very key to becoming a real good leader, okay? Because you have to be able to embrace other individuals that's outside of your realm. You have to be able to cultivate relationships. Now, these are things that always you find them in some different places and they might not be delivered to you, but you have to go out there. It's like going out into the community and forming a relationship with the various individuals that work in the community. Let's think of like community policing.
Right.
The relationship building that is trying to take place. Police officers, the community.
Right.
Children, teenagers, elderly. PAL, remember the Police Athletic League?
That's right.
Always building relationships through sports, education. These are things that's very crucial for us, relationship building, because these relationships can last a lifetime if you build them correctly.
That's right.
And you start with some strong links,
Right.
understanding, some great listening skills, got to have some great communication skills. You're going to also have to have some respect for contrary. Right? That's very important because remember, you're going to meet people on their home ground,
Sure.
on their home turf.
Right.
And sometimes you coming into someone's home turf, they're a little off-centered with that.
Mhm.
They're going to regard you like, what is it that you want, depending on what it is that you're doing with them. So as a leader, we have to understand cultivation.
Right.
It takes time. You have to really grow it.
Right.
You have to, before you can cross that bridge, I always tell individuals, before you cross the bridge, you got to begin to start laying down the bricks. Okay, because there's no path there yet until you begin the first one. You have to put your hand out, bring the people over.
Mhm.
You'll start communicating, sitting down, cup of coffee,
Yep.
tea, lemonade, just food. Food's always a wonderful way
Absolutely.
to start a relationship.
Okay. So here's the thing. So you've got to build a bridge together before you cross it.
Yes, you do.
Now, for our listeners and viewers out there, you may not have realized, if you were just not part of the two shows we did initially, that Evelyn is an ex-police officer. So you mentioned community policing, and I think you might have an example of relationships that was key based on an IPOH that she experienced. And here's the thing, folks. Every leader will experience an IPOH. Yes, it's an authorism. I created it. I got a lot of spare time on my hands. And IPOH is an intense period of heat.
Mhm.
And that really challenges you as a leader, but it makes you stronger if you can overcome it. So Evelyn, tell us about that IPOH you experienced when you were a police officer and you were trying to practice community policing.
Got thrust into the community policing way before everyone was into community policing. We had an issue that took place. It was after an arrest that went down, and people was very unhappy about that in the community. The community was very diverse, but then again, people lived in seclusion of their own particular races and ethnicities, lived in particular.
Oh, there were
groups.
fiefdoms in that community.
Yeah, we
for
sure
sure.
enough had quite a bit of that.
Mhm.
And so an arrest took place. People was very upset about that. Different things involved some teenagers that went off the tracks and different things that they were engaged in. But they weren't arrested. They were taken home. And it was it didn't go well. And so at some point in the night, the community came marching and to the police department. and it was really like a riot, and they really wanted to burn it down, and it really wasn't a good thing. So you had the police that all looked one particular way, with the exception of myself.
Right. So yeah, and talk about some other stakeholders besides the police, because in leadership, folks, you need to assess and do a strategic analysis of who are the stakeholders, who are going to be the folks most impacted by the action that you take.
Definitely. So many individuals that came marching from the various projects and things of that nature, marching down the street, screaming and hollering, and they ended up being outside the police department. And so my lieutenant was on the desk, and he was like, "Okay," and everyone's inside, and you're hearing all this noise out there, signs, and want to burn things. And so they were like, "Okay, so what are we going to do about this?" So we're standing there, and so then he looks at me and tells me, "Go outside and talk to them." And I'm like, okay, I didn't have anything to do with anything, but go outside and have a conversation with them. Go talk to them and stop it. And I'm like, okay, so who's going with me? Where's the backup or whatever? So I go outside thinking that maybe I will have a few people with me or officers. And I'm standing out there on the steps of the police department, and there's a whole bunch of people out there. A whole bunch of people out there. I mean, everyone from everywhere came. And I'm standing out there, but there was a few familiar faces, but it was dark. And I began to talk with them and to quiet them down and say, "You don't really want to burn the building down. First of all, it's brick. That's not going to happen. And let's discuss what went down, what happened, and with the situation with the children, with the teenagers, some violations that they did in terms of, it was at a marina that occurred, and they kind of vandalized the yachts. And different things transpired upon them running, and it ended up in the water and a lot of stuff, and they ended up taking them home, and they were wet, and it was crazy, but they weren't under arrest, so people was upset about that. So I just explained the situation to them. I got them to calm down. First, I listened to what they had to say. Then I said, "Let me just tell you a part that you don't know,
Right.
what transpired."
Mhm.
And they really were open to listening to me. And it's a matter of how you can speak to people, understand their pain. And I understood their pain. I understand how they felt about what transpired with their children. And it began to form a relationship. And some relationships I had earlier, you don't even know that these relationships are forming when you do
Which probably helped
anything.
you in
It
this
did.
crucial conversation.
That
You were
got
having with
people
them.
to go, "You know what, she's not like that.
That's right.
Let's listen to what she has to say."
Right.
Because when people, you being a police officer, you're meeting people not at the best times of their life. I mean, we don't go to people's homes when things are going great. They
That's
bake the cake and they're inviting you in.
Right.
You're normally going there, something is taking place, there's some assault that's happening, some harassment took place, someone is hurt, passed. You're going to deliver some news
Right.
about some family member, and you have to catch them, and it's not always a wonderful thing, but
Right.
depending on how you speak with individuals or the relationship that you form with them, it's trust.
It
And
is.
as a leader, that's what goes into these relationships. You have to have some honesty and some integrity.
Absolutely.
And so I believe forming that with them over the time that I've been there with them, this was early in my career, that the few arrests of listening to folks, taking them home, calling them a cab, not always arresting everybody when you don't need to. I think at this incident, when you had a few hundred people out there ready to, they wanted to take some heads, they began to calm down and were able to listen.
Right.
So we was able to stop,
Mhm.
they listened, and it's like, you need to go home.
Right.
And this is not done. But understand your pain, but also understand what we needed to do. None of the children were hurt, and they were not arrested.
Right.
We wanted them to go back home to their parents. We want you to go home and have this conversation with them, for them not to be violating people's property.
Right.
And things of that nature, which was really good. We had to have that same conversation with the owners of the yachts.
I'm sure.
So,
Which another important stakeholder.
yeah,
So here's a few things, if I can
yes,
do some critical thinking here.
of course.
And let's look at this. So first of all, one thing about leadership that's really important, listeners out there and viewers, is you need street cred. That's street credibility, and you had that. And we're talking about street credibility as a way of really emphasizing slang, but you can also have street cred in a corporation, in a not-for-profit organization, in a labor union. You need that credibility, and your body of work helped you with that
Yes.
crucial conversation, because, and we'll talk about this later, you're an authentic leader. And people knew that if you said something, it meant something to them. And you were really trying to be an interventionist,
Yes.
and you were also facilitating and really mediating this conflict, which
Yes.
we also do from
Yes.
time to time. So here's the other thing that we want our listeners and viewers to think about, and we realize that some of you are driving, some of you may be at home and in your offices. Evelyn mentioned at least 4 times the word listen. We'd like you to think about this if you're driving or if you're sitting down. If you write down the word listen, and this is a leadership exercise that's pretty painless, write down the word listen, scramble all 6 letters of the word listen. It spells 3 really important words. The first one is silent.
Are we going to give them a little time to kind of scramble that up? And when we come back,
Okay,
we're going to, you gave them one.
I gave him 1.
You
So
gave him
you
1.
want to hold the other 2
We're
in
going
the
to hold
band?
the 2 in the bands.
Okay, that's right.
And
Because
we
I
want
really didn't give him any time.
You didn't give them any
I'm
time.
double parked with my hazard lights
Yeah,
on
you
today.
do that sometime, but it's okay.
It's okay. I'm gonna
Yes,
slow
it
down.
is. It is.
Because I'm slow and luxurious, not fast and furious.
It's okay. It's all good. I love it anyway, sweetie. But anyway, it's all good. Now, folks, again, remember now, we want you to, scramble those words, and you have to use all 6
letters.
Right. But sometimes people come back and go, well, I have 3. No. You need to use all 6, scramble, and come up with the other 2 words.
That's right.
You gave them silent.
Okay, I did.
This is very important to the
I
conversation.
come bearing gifts today. I'm sorry.
Gifts. And it's
Okay.
very good. It's very good.
All right.
That's good. So the thing about this too, again, listening, communications, and I think when we talk about leadership, something that's truly important, and I want you to think about this as well. Keep this in your, not in the rear view, if that's some of you would like, but out front always. And I think when you talk about people with credibility with individuals, I think that's also based on your word being bond.
Yep.
And that's how I was raised, that your word is bond.
Right.
And what that truly means is that you have to honor what you say.
And that's in chapter 1 of the Leadership Playbook.
Yes, it is.
Your word is your bond.
Your word is your bond.
Regardless if you're from Canada, Abu Dhabi,
Yes.
South Africa,
Yes.
right? Little Rock, Arkansas,
That's it.
or Mount Vernon, New York.
There you go. You have to honor what you say, and you need to mean it. And also another thing that goes with a good leader is we all err. We make errors. We all sometimes are not correct. Sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes we emotionally hijack. Remember that conversation. We get emotionally hijacked, and we have to be able to pull back and tell people, I was wrong. I'm sorry.
That's
There's
right.
nothing wrong. A leader can apologize.
That's right. Now, think about this term, mea culpa. It's a Latin term, and that means I own this, I apologize.
Yes.
If there's anything that I did that offended you,
There you go.
I'm extending my apologies. Now, you've got to deliver that in a transparent way.
Yes, you do.
Because guess what? Our mama told us, I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night.
There you go.
So you know when somebody's saying something to you and they don't mean what they say and say what they mean.
Oh, you mean like this? Whatever.
Exactly.
I heard you.
Right.
Yeah, just move on now. You know what? That's okay. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, whatever. We don't want to be like that. We want to be fine leaders.
Right.
We want to be leaders of moral character,
Mhm.
and we have to be real.
Right.
Always be authentic, and we're going to talk about authenticity in a moment, a little later. But we have to be real with people. We are talking about people's lives and how a leader can affect people tremendously in a negative way as well as a positive way. Because you always want to have that elevated conversation.
Right.
So that's why it constantly. One other thing with leadership is it changes.
Mhm.
It changes. How you do things today is maybe not how you're going to do things 6 months from now.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that if we have time, maybe on our next segment,
Yes.
how leadership could be transactional or transformational,
Yes.
depending on the environment you're in. Or you can be a driver or a builder, which are also leadership styles. One
So-
last thing before we have a few announcements. And you made me think about this when you were talking about listening. Woodrow Wilson said, the ear of a leader must listen to the voices of the people.
Oh, yes.
Okay? So you've got to hear those voices,
There you go.
right? And for those fans out there of Covey, the 7 habits of highly effective people, habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So
There
this
you go.
leadership journey is not necessarily about you, but it's about your ability to listen to others and understand exactly what they're saying. So you have to hear, listen, and process.
There you go. And you have to be open for change.
Right.
Because all of that's for naught if you don't change the way you're doing business.
Right.
So as we go for announcements, you're going to take your break. You're going to scramble those words, scramble that one word, listen, and come up with 2 other words. Arthur gave you a gift of silence. You have to discover the other 2 yourself. We're going to do some announcements, play some music. KDIV 98.7.
Knowledge, diversity, inclusion, and variety.
See you back in a moment.
WDIV 98.7. This is Elevated Dialogue. I'm here with Evelyn Sakia, and we are back. And we gave you a stretch assignment before we went to our announcements. And that stretch assignment was to look at the word listen and scramble all 6 letters of the word listen. It spells 3 critically important words. The first one I gave you before the break was the word silent.
Mhm.
And there are 2 others.
That's right.
One is enlist, and the other one is inlets. And Evelyn Sakia, you have a particular perspective on inlets that you might want to share.
Oh, well, we have to know what an inlet is. A lot of people don't know what an inlet is. Many people that are boaters and fishermen or fishing women people, they know what an inlet is, or people who just study water. That's just, you just have like on a lake, like even if you think of like Beaver Lake or whatever lake you desire, Hudson River, whatever, there's always inlets, enclosed in which the water comes in from the main channel. It comes in. And the reason why this is important to listening and to leadership is that we have to always allow for information to be flowing into us. That means we're listening to other people's views, what they have to say. We always want to be open and be conscious and hear at a higher level, be totally involved in your conversation.
Right.
But right now they're speaking and they're telling you some information. So you want to be in the moment, listening to them and let the water flow in. That's inlet, information's flowing in. Now here's the key. It also flows out.
Right.
So as a leader,
Mhm.
you take in information from where you get the information from, hopefully from a source that's reliable. And then you study it, you do your assessment of it. And this is why you have people on your, as we've been talking to you, on your bench, surrounding you in your cabinet, whatever, on your team. These are people that's going to give you information. And maybe it's about areas that you're not so understanding about. That's not what your background's on. So we always want to get information from everybody else. Once you hear it in, hear what they're saying and discuss it, then you need to release it and put it out. And that's when the water is coming in and it flows out. It doesn't stay in. You don't suck it up and keep everything. You want to be able to give it back out
Right.
to the community, to your other relationships, to those that's in your fellowship, to those that we're going to talk about in a moment that you're mentoring.
That's right.
Okay, so that's what this is all about for inlets.
And here's the thing, I like the emphasis you had on water, and here's why. And we may have mentioned this in our previous 2 shows, that 70% of our body is made up of water.
Mhm.
So it's translucent, it's also transparent,
Yes.
which is
definitely.
important in leadership. And in addition, 70% of the world's mass is made up of water.
Mhm.
So water plays a really important role in your role as a leadership, if you will, ambassador, if you will, because it's important for us to be transparent, translucent, and also be authentic, which we're going to talk about later on.
And the thing too is, remember, we did discuss this when we talked about stress. Water is always changing. The temperature changes, the expanse of it changes, how deep it is, the depths of it. And when we talk about what our bodies are made up of, that's why we have all this emotion going on. So we have to always be in touch
Right.
with where we are at that moment. We got to always calibrate ourselves because at some points we have more emotions flowing, we have more water, higher levels of the ocean, depending on if it's raining, icebergs and things of that nature. So again, all of these things go into what the makeup of who we are
Right.
and you as a leader.
Mhm.
So at that moment that you might be a little bit exhausted,
Right.
or lack of sleep, or you're just doing go, not nourishing yourself as much, or you're doing, many things, or maybe your emotions are just a little bit all over the place. This is when you really have to be tuned into yourself
Right.
and calm yourself down, and don't forget that breathing because it's always essential. Now, before we move on to our next one, something came up during our break, which is really excellent. So we had our son here in the studio. We'll give a little shout out to our son, Jaleel.
What's up, Jaleel?
Thank you for your time and spending with your parents for a moment. That he said, "Oh, okay, now, very good. Okay, we're talking about leadership," and he says, everyone's not a leader." And it's like, that's right, because we're going to get into that next segment that everyone is not a leader. He said, because we have to have some followers, and because who are you going to be leading? And that is so true. We do need to understand that as leaders, we do have followers, and not that you're following and you're just stepping in tune, left, right, putting one foot in front of the other. But even those are the people that's on your bench. Those are followers too.
That's right.
But they also have quite a bit to offer. So they're not just mute. They're not just mummies. They're really human beings. And we need to understand who our followers are and we want to make sure that we're listening to them. But we also want to bring in other people. You don't just be chained to a particular group.
Right.
We want to bring in others, always consistently working in the community environment and relationships and building it up, because we always want to build relationships, okay? And same as when we get down to mentoring,
Right.
which is our next shift. Mentors are very important to everything that we do. And sometimes we only think of mentors as like the teachers, the educators, counselors, or
Big brother, big sister,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
fraternities, sororities. They do great work around
There you
mentoring.
go. But mentors show up in many forms. You can have your neighbor that's a mentor. Maybe you have a person that's a senior who's a great gardener, and you're trying to grow your garden, but you're killing all your plants. So you could have, your neighbor could end up coming and show you some fine tune your skills when it comes to growing
That's right.
and doing nourishing your plants and your garden and things of that nature. So mentors come in many forms. You can find them in many places. And the key to mentorship is that we want to make sure that you open to mentor individuals, because sometimes we don't think we're mentoring. We also think of coaches, because coaches are mentors, and let's not forget your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, whoever. Anyone can really be a mentor. If you see someone that's in need of some services that you can give, or some knowledge that you have that can help them elevate themselves,
That's right.
that's when you step in
Right.
and you offer that.
Well, and here's the thing: if there's a really user-friendly way to describe mentorship, is think about yourself and all the opportunities you've had and will continue to have to provide teachable and coachable moments to someone.
Yes.
Now, we in our firm, we have a mentoring process that we're very proud of.
Mhm.
And that mentor-mentee relationship, from a mentorship standpoint, is reciprocal.
Yes.
But it's also, we have the parties or the stakeholders, which followers are, by the way, we have them sign a mentor-mentee contract. Because a lot of folks think that mentors do all the heavy lifting
Mhm.
from a leadership standpoint,
Mhm.
and that's the mentorship model. That's not the only part of the playbook. That's just chapter one. Chapter two is that mentee, who's a stakeholder, who also has a vested interest,
Yes.
has to also
Yes.
have some responsibilities,
Mhm.
professionally and civilly,
Mhm.
and from a dignity and respect standpoint, to honor that mentoring relationship.
And remember, we talked about that. When you're mentoring someone, it's important to keep your word. If you're going to be someplace, be there.
Your word is your bond.
There you go. And also, as a mentee, you have to honor that agreement, which is so important. Now, sometimes things come up. Life happens, folks. And you have to be able to say, you can't be there. You send them a text. You FaceTime them. You do what you need to do. But we need to find a way that is agreed upon. When we need to get in contact, that's what we're going to use to get in contact with them.
Right.
So we want to have not just one way. You should have at least 3 of ways that I can get in touch with the individual that I cannot meet, or something has come up. And that's how we should do it to people. The thing too about with discussing is listening. And listening is a very important part of leadership in us as human beings. It's the communication process. We have to be able to have individuals can get in touch with us. So when mentors also understand, mentoring is not just something that's done with the person that's the older person, and with the younger person always got to be the mentee. But we got reverse mentoring, which is very important to this whole process. And sometimes for those of us that's, say, a baby boomer, not all baby boomers, many baby boomers are really into technology, and then there are some that are not. And so therefore you get that Xer, you get the Y millennial who can actually assist you
Right.
with their skills and help onboard you with
Right.
this. And then there are things that the baby boomer does fabulous that perhaps the other generation does not.
Right.
So we have that reverse mentoring. We can always elevate one another. And it's not about just the age thing, but age plays into who we are as people. And we
Right.
just need to understand that. And it's a good thing,
It is.
but we need to be open to receiving from places that we never would have looked before. And that's a good thing, that's important.
Well, it is. And just as a reminder to folks, and we may have mentioned this in our previous shows, there are 80 million baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And every day for the next 20 years, 10,000 baby boomers can retire. That's a lot of institutional knowledge. So traditional mentoring relationship or mentorship relationships in the leadership conversation or narrative have always been that seasoned person is the mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And they're bestowing or providing information and data and just content
Mm-hmm.
to that person that's chronologically younger. So to Evelyn's point, it doesn't have to be that way
No.
at all. The reverse mentoring model is, hey, you can have a Gen Zer. Shout out to my godson Carlos, freshman at Hampton University. Hey, this young man is a wizard when it relates to technology and social media,
Mm-hmm.
and I learn things from him in conversations that we have.
And it's
That's
like
reverse mentoring.
and it's like a grandson,
Mhm.
Jalen. Okay, this is it's family hour, but still, with Jalen. And when you went to that workshop here at Fayetteville Library.
That's right, on Periscope.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the only person in the room that was over 14. And that's okay. I felt very comfortable because I was with my grandson, our grandson.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And, obviously this is his sweet spot.
Yes.
So this is a classic case of reverse mentoring where I learned from him. He even knew about the workshop before I found it on the Fayetteville Public Library site. I said, Jalen, would you like to go to this? I said, Jalen, what's Periscope? And he explained it to me. I said, let's go hang out.
And that was a good thing. It's really wonderful. And so as we move to the next ship, which is stewardship,
Mm-hmm.
we want to make sure that each of us can be stewards of this process,
Right.
of the leadership journey. Because this is a journey which is going to take many turns. It's going to go left, right, upside down, capside. It depends. But things happen. We're human beings. We make mistakes. So, but the stewards of this process and any other process are the ones that actually make sure that we set the course, we show people what to do, and we guide them along their journey.
Right.
So you that are stewards in this process of leadership, communication, mentoring, building all that we need for fellowship, you'll be able to pass that on to others so they know what they're trying to do.
Right.
And this is what it looks like. Now, just because you're setting the path and the course and the degrees of how long you be here and what you need to do, it doesn't mean you're going to do it the same way.
Right.
Because we are individuals and we're impacted from our past, our present, the people that's on our ship with us, that's right there going where we're going. And we make turns left, right. We go a variety of places. And some of these journeys are a wonderful thing. So we need stewards of the process
Mm-hmm.
to know this is how you bring more people in. Because we have to teach people what to do when we're not the stewards any longer.
Right.
Okay, sometimes when that retirement comes, you might go over. But even when you're in the retirement, you might have to show somebody a little something. And it's all real good.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of stewards out there that we know, and we'd like to give you a salutation, adulations, congratulations from us. Because we know that you're stewards, you're dignified, you're leaders, you understand what stewardship is. Has a specific meaning with some of the folks that we have in our foxhole with us. And we want to do one shout out to a steward who just became the president of the Communication Workers of America, Local 1180. Gloria Middleton, if you're out there, you've been an amazing steward, and it has rightfully gotten you to ascend to the president of the Communication Workers of America in New York City. What a great example of a steward, and she was a shop steward. And that was her foundation. That's her DNA. And through progressively responsible positions, has now become the ultimate playmaker at this great organization.
And she has a great bench as well.
Oh, yes, she
We're here to
does.
support her with all the thousands and thousands
Oh,
of
absolutely.
individuals.
Gina Strickland
that
and the
can
rest
be
of the team
effective.
there. Absolutely.
Yes, excellent. So, hey,
Hey.
now we're going to go to our last ship.
Mhm.
Oh, buddy.
I'm going to let you tackle
This is
this
a good one. This is gamesmanship.
Oh,
And
boy.
no, I don't mean that game that's coming on in the afternoon or on
Oh.
Sundays or things of that nature.
But what about Game of Thrones?
They do a lot of gamesmanship. If you're watching that one, then you know they do the gamesmanship in a very brutal way.
They do.
But there are some
Oh,
individuals
it's high
that
stakes.
it is high stakes, and they use stakes too to take care of that stake.
Too much
It's
information.
too much.
Evan.
That's besides the point. The point is this: with gamesmanship, you have to understand we're not talking about people who's playing fair. See, in this game, when they're doing gamesmanship, they're plotting. They're plotting
Now, wait a
over
minute,
the
Evelyn.
weekend.
I might have to disagree with you.
Mhm.
There's some gamesmanship that is highly competitive.
That's true.
We got gamers out there who's listening and essentially viewing the show today.
Mm-hmm.
They're into game theory. There are some folks
That's
that
a different type of
understand
game.
zero-sum game.
There you go. Oh, see, we talk about the individual. We want to first deal with the people that are taking you off your game. because they plot to take you off your game. We're not talking about them individuals doing it the correct way and things like that. We're talking about the individuals that plot over the weekend. How are they going to irritate you when they see you on Monday? In fact, when you see them coming, you want to turn and run the other way. Because you know when you see Mary coming, Sue coming, Joe coming, oh, no, 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 no. You know they're going to make your day a living something. So the gamesmanship for them is because they have plotted how to irritate you. Remember we talked about that Jack in the Box? And you don't want to never be the Jack in the Box. This is what we talk about for this gamesmanship. So the gamers out there, no, not you. But then you do have some people like that too. They say things, they taunt you. We can see that in basketball, football. They knock you down, they stand over you like, yeah, gotcha. Wait for that next hit that's going to come. So that's to throw you off your game and get in your what? Head.
Right.
That's the gamesmanship we're talking about, that you want to make sure that you don't be a party to this.
That's right.
And as a leader, you can become a party to this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also be the offender.
You could be.
So you don't want to do that. We're talking about that type of gamesmanship. And what else you want to add to that?
Well, what you were talking about is folks think of institutional
Mm-hmm.
and systemic ways of trying to mostly hijack us.
Definitely.
So a little shout out to Rural Judo, Dr. George Thompson. He talks about ways that as leaders, in terms of gamesmanship, we can use the 5 Ds. We can decompress, defuse, de-escalate, disarm, and deflect. For those fans of The Matrix, you remember when Keanu Reeves had all those different bullets coming at him. And what was he doing, Evelyn? He was deflecting them, right? And that...
Slow motion, people, slow motion.
There you go, sister. Go on and show it to them. We have to have the ability as leaders to pivot.
Yeah, we
And
have to.
sometimes we are so linear
Mhm.
in our leadership approach, we stay in the same lane.
Right.
And sometimes we have to be flexible and adaptable.
Yes.
And that's why, if you think about Gumby and his body of work,
Mhm.
obviously he was a good color, green. Hey, my initials are ATM, I like green. The bottom line is he also was flexible and adaptable.
Right.
And that's what we have to be with gamesmanship, because people will send a missile across the bow at you.
You know it, folks.
Okay, so here's another reference. Sun Tzu, the smartest strategy in war is being able to achieve your objectives without having to fight. So it's about strategy and tactics.
That's right. You can't have strategy, or you might have had that strategy, but your tactics are all incorrect. And your tactics can be undermined when you allow someone to take you out of your game, to take you out of your focus, takes you out of your own line of defense and offense that you have put out and set out that what you were going to do, and takes you away from, hey, this is what we are going to do. This is what we have planned.
Right.
And you got individuals say, you know what, I'm going to throw some paint on that plan. And now what you going to do?
Right.
So your strategy that you have been committed to, and sometimes you have to just make adjustments because things happen. Remember, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with human beings, and stuff happens. You have to be understanding of that.
Right.
You can control only the things that you can control. Things that can be controlled, you can control them. Sometimes it's out of your venue. You can't do anything about that. You need to breathe for a moment,
Right.
and then come up with another plan
Right.
of attack or strategy on what you're going to do. And as a leader,
Right.
you need to have multiple ones.
You do.
You have to have multiple
And
ones.
you can't allow this to happen, folks, and we want you to remember this. You can't go through SIS. You
That's
can't
right.
suffer in silence and
Mhm.
allow yourself to be marginalized. And we're going
That's
to
right.
talk in one of our other segments about being a victim of implicit bias and
Mhm.
micro inequities and micro triggers and microaggressions.
Right.
So that's important for us to understand. And remember Eleanor Roosevelt, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
And that's what too many of us have been doing for too long. Remember we talked about being able to say no. You're going to say no to not that behavior, no to that treatment, no to that mentality that people like to subjugate you and put you in that corner with a dunce cap on your head. You have to say no to these things that makes you feel small.
Right.
You have to understand that you're larger than that. You're just wider than that. You have more in here than anyone might know. If you're thinking up here, that's fine and dandy, but you have to live right here.
Right.
Okay, so there's nothing wrong with having your hopes and your dreams, but you as a leader, you have to do that. So when we do get around to transactional transformation, we'll talk more about that. That blends all into what we're discussing. But this is a big topic, folks, which is A-OK. And we're going to be with you on this topic and many other topics to elevate your dialogue. So as we go to a
Announcements.
break,
Yes.
we want to be able for you to be thinking about what you have uncovered in you with what we discussed so far. Think about it, come back to us, listen to some good music. KDIV,
98.7.
the voice of diversity.
Knowledge, diversity, inclusion, and variety.
See you in a moment.
Okay, KDIV 98.7. We are Elevated Dialogue. This is Evelyn Sakia. I'm ATM, Arthur Theodis Matthews, and we've been having a really good conversation around leadership, specifically around the ships you need to navigate. Some of the ships, just to give a review, if you're just joining us today, if you're just viewing us today or listening, we've talked about a number of ships under the leadership banner, and those ships are gamesmanship, fellowship, relationships, mentorship,
Stewardship.
and stewardship. Okay, so now what a great transition.
Mhm.
We're going to now talk about one of the principles of leadership that are reasonably recent. We'll talk about some more in our next segment. We're going to talk about authentic leadership. It's a concept that Dr. Bill George created. He's been a long-time professor at Harvard University, and we're going to talk about the 5 principles of authentic leadership. Authentic meaning what to you, Evelyn Sakia?
That's just being real. That's being honest. That's being present. That's again honoring your word. Your word is bond, and what you do. You come across as your essence, if you can understand that. When you're delivering and you're talking and when you're being with someone, you want to be there, and you want to be able to have a real conversation.
Right.
You want to be able to enlist them in it, and you want to be present.
Right.
So being authentic is that real you, but again, understanding that we're human beings.
Right.
And understanding that we will make mistakes.
Right.
Own up to your mistakes and try not to repeat them.
Right.
But again, we're human beings. We're always developing and growing.
Right.
So being authentic that's just real, honest. Your heart's in it. Your mind is there. You're all in.
Absolutely. And let's just talk, just to give you a blueprint in terms of your leadership footprint, let's talk about the 5 characteristics of authentic leadership. The first one is purpose, and Evelyn will drill down in just a minute, also known as passion. The next is heart. The third is values. The fourth, self-discipline. And the fifth is relationships. So Evelyn, let me ask you, from an authentic leadership standpoint, let's start with purpose. What's your ideology, what's your lens, what's your optics on that particular part of the authentic leadership model?
In order for you to know where you're going, you need to know why I want to get there.
Okay.
How am I going to get there?
Right.
What am I going to do to get there? What is it that I want? So you have to have a purpose to do whatever it is that you want. Some of us can be freewheeling individuals, but in the end, when you have something that in your gut, that's in your heart, that's really real for you.
Right.
That's your purpose or your passion.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have your passion, you just want to put all of you in it. So you need to have some objective.
That's
you
right.
need to have a pattern. You need to lay it out. You need to map it. You need to have an understanding of this is what I want. Here's the goal, an end game. However,
Right.
how am I going to get there? What road am I going to be on?
That's right.
And how am I going to do this whole thing? So you got to lay it out. How are you going to do it? You're going to transition,
That's right.
you know?
So here's the thing. Purpose and passion are used interchangeably in the book, Authentic Leadership. And we often say in our firm, in our practice, that if you have a passion for what you do, you will never work a day in your life. So here's the thing. Evelyn just talked about a goal or objectives. One thing that we think will be important with purpose is for you develop. And how many of us that are listening and viewing today, you know your organization's mission, vision, and value statement? You know it because they require you to read it when you get hired. You might look at it on the bulletin board, right? Every once in a while when they're training sessions, and we're trainers, so we understand that. It's important to hit the reset button because some folks forget what the mission, vision, and value statement is of the organization. This is what we'd like you to do in terms of purpose. Think about your own individual mission, vision, value, and expectation statement. This is your manifesto. This is your contract with yourself. Put it up on a bulletin board in your woman cave or man cave. Make sure it's on a flip chart. Make sure that you can see it, smell it, touch it, feel it, absorb it. And that's going to be important to your purpose. So think about what your mission, vision, value, and expectation statement will be for you, not your organization. This is individual, right? And Plato said it best, the beginning is the most important part of any work. So if you got a purpose and you can manifest it in words and you can own it yourself and look at it every day, that'll be a good start.
And remember, we discussed that when we talked about work and life dynamics. We mentioned that, and we stressed too, saying organizations have this, why can't you have this for yourself? If your car can go get a tune-up and you have to take care of your car, they have levels in which they say this is when you need to go do this thing. Well, that's what this is in terms of what you want to do in your life. You want to formulate that passion. You know you got that. So those dreamers out there, remember we talked about that last session, the people that are dreamers, that's fine and dandy. You have to dream it. Some people have to dream it so they can really feel it and want to believe it and
That's right.
go for it. Some of us are that way. Others are not. Some people, it just comes straight out of here. You think, you're thinkers, and some are not dreamers. But whichever way you're going to get there, it's all good.
Right.
As long as you move forward with it, whatever strategy that you need so you can make it happen.
Right.
And that's what's so important
Mhm.
about this whole purpose, passion. Make this your year.
Right.
Make this year. This is your year, 2018, to put it to paper, put it on your tablet,
Right.
put it on the computer, put it somewhere. Just do it,
Just do it.
because this is the year for you
Right.
to do something new, to get you off the couch, to get you from in front of the game, whatever got you stagnant. This is the year maybe to live some of your dreams,
Right.
to really do them.
Mhm.
You gotta go for it, Joe.
And this is authentic leadership on court.
Yes, it is.
When you can do that. Now, a mission, vision, value, and expectation statement, Evelyn, Sakia, might be too extensive for some.
Mhm.
So we have a shorter approach that might be helpful to you,
Mhm.
where you can actually bullet some items, and that is something else organizations do. Whether they're Fortune 500 companies,
Mhm.
not-for-profit organizations, labor unions, we do this as well in our practice. We help them with a SWOT analysis.
Mhm.
Not SWAT, we teach that too. That's special weapons and tactics. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you deciding as a leadership journey, as
Mhm.
part of your authentic leadership and your purpose, do a SWOT analysis. In other words, again, flip chart paper in your command center, wherever that is in your house, and you write down strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's your SWOT analysis. Now, in terms of purpose, and you need to be symbolic, make sure that the strengths and opportunities are written in black and the weaknesses and threats are written in red. And it's very simple in terms of your purpose and your goals and objectives, which Evelyn talked about. You want to make sure you can expand your strengths.
Mhm.
You want to reduce your weaknesses.
That's right.
You want to increase your opportunities. And you want to purge, sanitize, obliterate, annihilate, eviscerate your threats.
Move them to the left.
That's right.
Move them to the right. But just move them out of your life.
There you go. So the goal is very simple. You need to make sure your strengths and opportunities outweigh your weaknesses and threats.
Mhm.
If you can do that, that'll help you to be purposeful,
Yes.
and you can start to achieve those goals and objectives.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, so Evelyn, our next principle under authentic leadership is values.
Values.
So tell me about that, and I've got some thoughts I'd like to share with you.
Okay. What do you value? Each of us hold different values.
But why is that? Where do we get them from?
Well, most of us get them from our home, from growing up, whoever raised us. And so parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and let's be real, some people are raised in the street or by individuals because maybe they did not have a nucleus
Mhm.
So when you say raised in the street, doesn't mean that you're not, raised like walking around like, dogs and cats and things like that. But sometimes it takes a community to raise our children,
Right.
to raise people. Some of us might have been in shelters or in homes,
Mhm.
and someone probably never found that forever home. So a lot of our values are strongly built in us from young. Also, we get them from school. When we first attend school, there you've seen other people with different values than your own, your neighborhood. If whatever your religion is, if you go to church or a mosque, a synagogue, or anything, values are stated there as well. How are you raised? And this continues, and let's not forget the media sets that as well. Media is very important for many people because some people get their values that way
Right.
from what they can read, what they see on television. Some people live through movies and think that's what that town is like, that's what that city is like,
Right.
that's what those people are like.
Right.
And it's not real, it's not authentic information, it's misinformation, it's fake information.
Right.
However, many times people don't realize that. So values are made and given in many ways by growing up,
Right.
but it changes. And what about when you go to college? That's a whole new realm.
Well, if you go to
people.
college, maybe you can go to an apprenticeship program,
Sure enough, can.
and your values can be defined there. So I have a
Sure.
question for you.
Mhm.
Where did you get your values from?
Definitely mine's from home. My parents.
Tell us about that.
Parents that was very, I feel, very authentic, transformational, as
They were.
well as transactional.
They were activists, folks.
They definitely were activists. They were
Yes.
definitely activists in the movement, making sure that individuals, not just those that are African American, but Native American, whatever you are, making sure that your rights are valued, making sure that you are valued, that we learned about other cultures and religions and ethnicities and races, that we knew who we were, respected who we were, but also respect and honor other individuals that are not like yourself.
Right now, how many siblings did you have?
8.
8. That's a small household.
Small household, and I was the youngest. I was unexpected. My mom went to, make it really short, my mom, okay, granted, had 7, but she was, done. She thought she goes to the doctor for a cold, and the doctor says, "Well, I would really think you would know what this is by now." She's like, "No, but no, you'll know in 7 more months. One more."
That's a long cold.
Long call, but sure enough, so it was unexpected and just really beautiful. And my dad unfortunately left early. He passed when I was 9, but influential in terms of my education
Right.
of people in the world. He used
Right.
to take me to school every day, walk me to school, make my lunch and things of that nature. But was very strong, and his name was Rising Sun in our community because he always was out there with individuals helping elevate people as a
Well,
whole.
Folks, she's being very humble about this. Her father was a street speaker in Harlem. All right, so those of you that know New York and know that a part of the 60s and 50s and African diaspora is when folks would advocate and agitate, and they would literally stand on a box on a street corner, didn't have to get a permit from the police department, and just start to talk about what was really important to them in terms of their lens.
Yes, very good. And that's
Yes.
where he saw my mom walking by. So
It's a good thing.
yeah, it was a good thing. That
That's right.
wasn't for us. But anyway,
That's
so,
right.
But it is. And
Mhm.
so therefore for my home, so around the dinner table was where we sat down and was educated.
Right.
When our dad would give us history lessons and geography all around the world, about Africa and Asia, and every group of people that were out here
Right.
or in this world, he would go back and tell us how they came about, how they developed, who was their leaders, what was going on.
Right.
So that when we went out in the world, that we were educated, nobody could tell us who we tried to put on us that you're this type of people
Right.
when we were not. You always make your way. You always understand where you come from so
Right.
that you know where you are going
That's
as a
right.
people and why you do some of the things you do.
That's
And
right.
how we could be better individual, better adults, children, and
Mhm.
also raise our children properly. So these things were very important, and that's what my mom and dad did.
Well, here's the thing. So your leadership trajectory was defined by some strong DNA.
Yes.
Okay, and it sounds like it continues today. Now, for me, my leadership trajectory was defined by 4 women in my household. My mother, okay, and I was very close to my 2 grandmothers.
Mhm.
I had an older sister, Cheryl.
Mhm.
So shout out to my mom, my grandma Mimi, and it was the 4 women or the 4 Shiros, and now I have another Shiro who provides me teachable and coachable moments from a leadership standpoint, and also teaches me values. So it was those four women, and there were three pictures on my wall. And this is where I extracted my values from.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not being religious in anything, I was an usher boy when I was 12, okay, and St. John's Baptist Church. And so on the wall was Jesus, John F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. And I often say the three pictures on the wall didn't scare me. It was the four women in my house that I was around all the time that really established the values that I have today. And I continue to have the receiving end of teachable and coachable moments about values. And those are conversations, we have all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, coming into this situation, all of us are a work in progress. And I certainly can attest to that.
And that's the thing too with values, they change. And we just need to be aware about that. Maybe the values that you grew up with, you realize they were incomplete. They maybe were not totally correct.
Right.
Maybe some misinformation.
Skewed.
Maybe it really was. And maybe it's your lens that the people who was giving it to you was looking out. And remember, values is something based on people's personal experience many times.
That's right.
And that's how we get them. But hopefully they change and they get better and they're more accepting and more open for really truth when you start getting out in the world, meeting other individuals, not just from your own community, but outside your community.
That's right.
Not people just from if you have a religion, not just from your religion, but other religions. Maybe seeing some common ground there. And if you're not religious, that's okay too.
Right.
Whatever you are as a human being in this world, we want to be able to embrace that
That's
of
right.
others. Look at another human being and see them as a human being.
Right.
See them as oneness, maybe as with you.
That's right.
But we won't know that until we have a conversation.
Mhm.
And we need to continue to have these conversations with individuals so that we all can be elevated and appreciate what we are brought to this universe to do,
Right.
what we are here in this nation at this time to do. Also understand where your people come from. Understand their hurdles and their trials and tribulations.
Right.
What was it? Because all of that is in you
Right.
so that you know that you can be better. So know your history.
That's
Know
legacy.
your past. That's right.
And that's part of the leadership sojourn, understanding what is my legacy.
That's your DNA.
Right.
Know where it is. Where does it come from?
Right.
What makes me strong in some areas? In other areas, you don't even know why you're sensitive about it. Or it's like, oh, it's just as rough for you. Or you're having difficulty getting over. Well, that could be something that you didn't even put there.
Right.
That could be something that's from someone else in your ancestors and things that they've gone through. It also just depends on how you believe. Some people feel that they've been reborn, rebirthed, and things of that nature. And it's all good. And even sometimes when you might not have that faith or that belief as another human being,
Right.
we have to be able to listen and try to understand
Right.
what someone else is feeling.
Yeah, that's leadership.
It
Of
is.
course,
And we
it
have to
really
be there. And that's what makes a good leader. Remember, we asked you, what are the characteristics of the leader that you respect or that you think did a fine job? What characteristics does that leader that you recognize as a fine leader
Right.
bring to the table? And many times that person that you say that's a great leader, sometimes those characteristics that they represent might not be characteristics that's in yourself.
Right.
And you find that in someone else. Then other times as individuals that you can relate to that because that's how I am. And they have the same thing.
That's
So we mesh wonderful.
Right.
And then there's other reasons why we like a particular leader. Hey, they just being able to say something that you think you could never say.
That's right.
And so sometimes we want a leader that bring people together. Sometimes we want a strong one. We want a stern one. We want a rigid one. Sometimes we want a peace-loving one. Sometimes we want a variety of leaders,
Right.
Different characteristics. But that's important for you to survey that,
Right.
to really do an in-depth study. Okay, why did I choose this particular person? But also what we do in class or when we have groups and we're training in an organization, even wherever, we always have this topic of leadership. Who is it that you represent? Who do you think is a fine leader?
Right.
And then they have conversation with one another. And then then you have to choose one from the group.
Right.
Who's going to be that leader?
That's right.
So now you got to be able to be open. I'm telling you why I like this person, this woman, this man, my coach, my mom, my this. And then everybody listens to this, but you still got to choose one. And so sometimes that's by persuasion that they chose it, or sometimes they listen and say, oh my, that person did some awesome things.
Right.
And you can see how they affected others.
Right.
So again, leadership is something that's always an ebb and flow. You need to be the same.
Right.
You're going to change. You develop as we mature. What you needed before, we might not need now. What was great in first grade, not great in sixth grade. What was great in sixth grade wasn't great in eighth grade. What was great in 12th grade is different when you become a senior, or when you become a freshman in college, or in your trade school, or whatever it is that you're doing in the program that you're doing. Things that you had in the past might not be crucial for right now. You put them in the back until you need them again.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now,
it's all good.
One last thing before we get to some announcements. In terms of values, let's think about ethics and ethos at the same time. It's important for us to think about this one quotation, and this is Samuel Langhorne Clemens. He said, always do right. This will gratify some and astonish the rest. Or for those of you that like Spike Lee, do the right thing.
That's
All
really great. So as we go to our break, I want you to think about all that we discussed. See how that impacts you and where you are at this moment. What impacted you in the past? What you no longer need, pack it up. Pack it up. I'm not using that no more. That defeats my purpose. Do things now to get you on the course that you need to be on for 2018. So we're going to be right back at you. KDIV.
98.7.
The voice of diversity.
Knowledge, diversity, inclusion, and variety.
See you in a moment. Take care.
Beautiful. 7, you are here with Evelyn Sakia. I'm ATM, Arthur Theodis Matthews, and we're from Elevated Dialogue. And we've been talking about, in the last segment, authentic leadership with the 5 principles of purpose, also passion, heart, values, self-discipline, and relationships. And we ended our last segment talking about values, and that is synonymous with ethics. And we wanted to just tell you a little bit about what's been trending, particularly in corporate America, because there have been some continuous ethical mishaps, ethical intense periods of heat. So about 15 to 20 years ago, there started to be a real increase in 2 positions in corporate America that have really increased the attention, deservingly so, around leadership and ethics. And that is the influx of chief ethics officers, okay, and also chief compliance officers. A lot of you that do the deep dive in corporate America, you know that Sarbanes-Oxley changed a lot of this conversation with that legislation being passed in 2002. And that was really the result of leaders who were supposed to be maintaining the highest level of standards acting unethically. And there were 3 organizations in particular that were engaged in this practice, and there were many others. But Enron, WorldCom, and Tyco was really the reasons why now all this attention is being directed towards trying to make sure organizations comply and have ethics policies. And so we just wanted to mention that as part of this conversation around values and ethics. And now we're going to talk a little bit, although we talked about it earlier, about relationships as part of the 5-step authentic leadership model. Evelyn, any thoughts briefly? We talked about it quite a bit
We
before.
talked about it quite a bit earlier about
With
the
the
shifts. So just understand relationships, we just constantly building those. They
Right.
change. Just sometimes what relationship was in the past you don't need now, and we gotta always think about that. And relationship is just ongoing,
Right.
and it's a powerful thing.
It is. And for those of you that are lifelong learners, you go to conferences, seminars, you meet presenters, you meet colleagues, you meet peers, you meet like-minded people who are looking to expand their leadership blueprint as well as their leadership footprint. When you meet somebody, and this is leadership uncorked, this is next level leadership. And just this week, I told my students this. When you meet somebody new, a lot of times we get their business card, we give them our card, and 2 or 3 weeks later, we look at the card and say, who the heck is this? Because you don't follow up and don't exercise due diligence.
And one thing too that would help with those cards, because listen, not everybody, you just be exchanging these cards and you just put them in your wallet or your purse or whatever. You should write on the cards before you slip them in,
Yes.
just who this person was.
Absolutely.
So that when you look at that card, because many cards don't have a picture, and sometimes you're not going to remember who that face, like, who was that? Just write down something that you notice you had a conversation about, or
Right.
whatever it is, what's your intention later on when you want to talk to them, when you want to email them or something, what was that about that you had that conversation about? Write that
Excellent.
down on a card so that it'll always be fresh in your mind.
That's right. And so that you can personalize the communication that we're about to tell you about, and that is make sure you practice the 48-hour rule. In other words, when you meet somebody new, and we practice this when we speak, and we speak a lot through our business at seminars and conferences, that within 48 hours, we're going to communicate with you in some way, shape, or form so that you can start to build that bridge together before you cross it that Evelyn talked about earlier. Don't wait 2 or 3 weeks or a month because, as Evelyn said, you'll be disconnected. 48 hours or less, person will be impressed because you're following up in expeditious fashion, and that's a competitive advantage from a leadership standpoint.
There you go.
Okay, so let's talk about, we have 2 more principles of authentic leadership, and then we're going to finish up with civility and respect. So Evelyn, there's a principle under authentic leadership called self-discipline. Tell me your thoughts about that.
Self-discipline sometimes, for one thing, for some people this is a very difficult task or
Why is that,
place
though?
or an issue for them. It takes a lot to be able to discipline your mind. It takes a lot to be able to discipline your mouth. Some people have no filters, and you have to begin to have these things. You have to be able to understand the thoughts that you think can sometimes affect what you do in your body of work, as well as the words that you say to another human being. So self-discipline is definitely something that, as an individual, we have to control.
You mean somebody that suffers from foot-to-mouth disease?
Foot-to-mouth disease.
And what does that look like?
Well, foot-to-mouth disease is something that's it can be very egregious, it can be hurtful, it can be harmful. Even when people are bullying individuals, it's the same type of thing. But then again, definitely when you got that foot-to-mouth disease, you're just saying whatever you want to say. And sometimes our intention is to hurt someone else, and sometimes our intentions, it's not. We just don't know how it's going to be received.
Right.
And when it does hurt, we don't know what to do. So we're kind of stuck. So you should always think, use this, before it just flows out your mouth. Because sometimes we like to say with the foot-to-mouth disease, your tongue for many individuals have been out of your mouth too long. We have a barrier there, which is your teeth, regardless of what shape they're in. They're yours by birth or not. They're there to serve a purpose. See, your tongue can't flow out of your mouth and say unkindly words to another human being until you open your mouth and slip that tongue between the teeth. Then it's slapping people all over the place. It's on. It's a fair game. I'm chopping people down. And the thing you have to remember is just think about, take 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Think before you speak. Are you speaking out of anger, hurt, pain? I want to get back at this individual. Sometimes we have these envious thoughts or payback, and we just say things that cut people down to their ankles, and that's unkind and unjust. So self-discipline is important for communications. It's important to save you. It's important to help another human being.
Right.
It's important that you can ruin your job, future jobs, by not having any discipline.
Right.
Especially when it comes to social media. And you just be on that thing, letting it all hang loose. And there are some things that everyone don't need to know about.
That's right. And in addition to that, as we talked about the trending about chief ethics officers and chief compliance officers, folks, you need to understand that what you say on social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, if it's offensive and you work for an organization that has a strong policy against you not performing in a professional manner, you can be disciplined up until termination and discharge.
There you go.
Because you're not self-disciplining well, because you feel, I've got a voice, I got a forum, I know there's 4 billion videos out
I'm
there.
gonna let it out.
Right, every day that's streamed around the world.
Putting it
I'm
out
gonna
there.
put a video out there, only 30 seconds, but I'm gonna upload it on Facebook. I'm gonna get back at my supervisor.
So you know what you should do, folks? You're upset and angry. You want to pay back. You know, what you need to do is, if you're going to do those types of things, you're going to do that email, that text, all that other kind of stuff.
In bold letters and red.
Before you hit that send button, you need to wait.
Yeah.
Don't even do the 3-second rule on that because you done typed it up. You done wrote it up and you're about to slip it on the Facebook and Twitter and every place else. So you know what you need to do? You need to leave that alone. You need to go for a walk. You need to go for a jog. You need to ride your bike. You need to put on some peaceful music. You need to jump in the shower. You need to really take a bath. You need to sit back and have a glass of water. You need to go in your little private corner that we said that's just your place for peacefulness and happiness and finding yourself, center yourself and have some mindfulness. Ooh, you need to have an USA moment before you hit that send button. Now, after you do those things, come back the next day and realize, you know what, maybe I shouldn't send that.
Well, wait a minute, Evelyn. Wait. So what if I can't discipline myself? I mean, I knew that Twitter gave me 140 characters.
Now you got 280. Oh, you got 280.
So I'm not going to discipline well because they've given me some more real estate to say what I need to say.
Well, you go ahead and you say that, but what we just stated to you, all this stuff is going to be discoverable. All this stuff is going out here. As soon as you put that out there about your employer, about your location, and you just throwing somebody under the bus, the thing you need to think about, besides the fact that you might lose your job, think about that somebody might say you is libel, slander.
Yeah, could be.
You can have all these things. And let's talk about something else. Too many of us are because you're behind your keypad or behind that computer and you could just say what you need to say, but we're not thinking about the harm that we're doing to other human beings.
That's right.
Think about that a moment, the harm.
The repercussions.
Now, what if it was you that someone was writing about? What if what you're about to hit that send button for, what if they were writing about you, your loved ones, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend? How about your children?
Your partner.
What about anyone you care about? Somebody put that up on those thousands of videos or words that's going to be going out there. What if somebody did that for your loved one? How would you feel?
Well, just imagine the collateral damage that will have.
There you go. You know how many of we're going to talk about this when we do our bullying though, but how many deaths come from behind words like that? What are you serving to do something like that? What is your purpose here? What are you trying to do? You trying to maim them that bad and you also maiming you too? It's like a boomerang effect. It hits a lot of people other than just the one that you want to hit. It hits families.
Unintended victims.
And it hits yours too. So when it's self-discipline, very important. You need to have some self-discipline. If you don't have no self-discipline, here's a suggestion. Stay off of Twitter, Facebook, all the stuff. You have no self-discipline, the only self-discipline you need to do is not do it. That just, if you could stick with that, you're good.
Right.
Self-discipline that way. Then you don't have to worry about these other things. Now, the only thing you have to do with is when you see these people, now you're going to have to go back to the stress show that we did.
Right.
And work on some techniques there. But, you do some breathing exercises and you go the other way. You're going to have to do some avoidance for a moment. But when we talk about conflict resolution, we're going to be talking about a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
How to uncover, discover, things to do to help you move forward with that conflict that you have in life. But as we move on.
Well, here's the thing. One last thing in terms of leadership, authentic leadership and self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do some looping here. And looping is connecting concepts that are related to one another, either directly or indirectly. So in terms of self-discipline, we want to also tell you about emotional intelligence. And 3 of the competencies of emotional intelligence have to do with the self-discipline bucket.
And we're going to get on that too.
Absolutely.
In a little bit.
Self-determination, self-awareness, and self-regulation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in another one of our segments. But we wanted to put it on your radar screen in your GPS now. Self-discipline is a big part of authentic leadership.
It really is. But that's a big part of life. We teach our children to have some self-discipline.
Right.
They don't scream all night. Don't be having some fits in the store, dropping out on the ground. We try to teach our children
There's some adults that do that.
That's quite true. So that's a whole nother area. But, we do have people that have no discipline. So you got to stay off these sites. You have to have discipline. Be disciplined. If you don't have no discipline, you got to put a lock on your thing sometime. So let's do our last
Well, let's just talk about heart. Tell me
Yeah.
about that. And that's also connected to emotional intelligence. But I wanted to glean your perspective, your optics, and your lens first. When you think about heart as part of authentic leadership, what comes to mind, Evelyn Sakia?
I think it just pulls everything together. Because I do believe for us as human beings, we have this code. Our heart has become a vessel that, what's in there? It has become a vessel that, where's the heat? You know, when you do your chakras,
Tell
if
them what those
anybody,
are,
you
Evelyn.
know, deal with some holistic healing, we have chakras. We have hundreds, but we really basically deal with 7. But we're going to talk about the heart one, sitting right here, which is crucial to you as a human being, to keep you centered, to keep you in touch with yourself and other human beings. When you do something good for another human being and you do some healing for them, you give them some kindness, do some mentoring, it keeps your heart chakra green.
Mm.
Not green with envy, but green with the purity of doing something for another human being,
Right.
for an animal, for the earth, all this good stuff. We have to really be on target and understand this heart is a living thing.
Right.
This is a living vessel. This is a living part of our bodies. This is a big artery here. This controls everything in our body along with our brain. When this doesn't work, we have an issue. Heart transplants, they might be doing those, you know, sometimes it's difficult. But when this is really bad, man, this can really deep six you.
Well, let me ask you a question then. There were some ideas years ago that in order to be successful in certain environments, from a leadership standpoint, that sometimes you had to be ruthless, heartless, and narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
So how do those leaders that, and some of them were successful,
Mm-hmm.
were heartless.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really have compassion or empathy, which is a prerequisite to have with emotional intelligence. So how were they successful, although they were maybe flawed with their heart and their sensitivity?
It's about how you're going to measure this. But, you know, sometimes as you climb into the top, some people are heartless. They're going to shut this down because I have this goal over here. But also, by the time they get to the top and they have the money that they need, the success that they need, their company is whatever it is, well, who's standing there with them? See, along the way, many people lose the thing that they thought wasn't meaningful, maybe their family, maybe their loved ones. They lose their people who mean them well along the way. So when they stand up there on that, it becomes a cliff
The
now
perch.
because you're standing on that perch, but that perch is something for you to fall off of, but you're standing there alone. Who is sharing all this glory with you?
That's right.
It's lost because you can still attain that.
Right.
But you don't have to be cold and heartless.
Right.
Because sometimes people think I need to just speed on down the road, run you over. That's like people thinking they speed down the road, run you over, and take you home to their garage, and you're still on the bumper. And people, when you read about something like that, you say, now that's cold and that's heartless. How could you do that to another human being?
Right.
And see, this is what we're talking about. You can attain all this beautiful, the glitter. There's nothing wrong with that. You can
Right.
have your bank account full. There's nothing wrong with that. We all want to live wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't have to hurt another human being. I don't have to put someone else out in the cold in order for me to achieve my glory.
Right.
I can achieve my glory and look at me in the mirror, and you're going to look at you in the mirror and know that you did it in the rightful manner.
Right.
And I didn't maim people along the way. I didn't break up no legs. I didn't break up no homes. I didn't tear down some housing. Where are people going to be living?
Right.
So we have to think about that. And there's too much coldness in our world. Open this up because this is essential. You keep this forever, essentially. And some people say as you age, this thing gets colder and colder. No, not necessarily. You can, however you was in the beginning with this,
Right.
you could be better as a human being. And that's why we're talking about leadership. Understand this, people. However you started out, you can change.
Right.
It is never too late until they're throwing that dirt on you. It's not too late. You can change. If this is cold, open it up. Get out there, do your mentoring. Get out there and help another human being. Helping just one other human being can change you. Go take some
Right.
food to some people. Go to some shelter. You see the person on the corner. Maybe it's not all of them are really like that, but you know, I don't know. Sometimes I stop at the store and I pick up some, say Chick-fil-A or something, and I have some food, and I have that burger, not a burger, but the chicken or the drink, and would you like this?
Right.
You know, just help another human being or an animal. Reach, put some trees in your community. Do something good to elevate salvation, to elevate the life, this world that we are living in, our
Right.
community, a school.
Servant leadership, which we will be
We're going to
talking
get
about.
on that because when you can help someone else,
Mhm.
it opens you up for change, and the heart feels it.
Right.
Life begins to grow through you again. You're like a tree. You begin to grow and blossom.
And as we finish up the show for this segment and this week, we want to just talk briefly about civility and respect. I have a quotation that I like to share that I think really captures the essence of this, and this is from Desmond Tutu. He said, "A person is a person because he or she
Mhm.
recognizes others as persons."
Yes.
And I know you have some thoughts for the last minute that we have about civility and respect.
It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't take nothing from you. You just do it.
That's leadership.
That's it. Just do it. Respect another human being. Grant civility to another. It returns back to you. May the rest of your week and 2 weeks before we talk with you again, may it be nothing but happiness, blessings, just wholeness.
And January 23rd is our next show,
Yes, it is.
4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time.
And what after that?
That's right. And the one after that, February 6th.
February 6th. And give another date. What's the next date? February 20th.
February 20th is
We'll be
correct.
with you.
Mhm.
You take care, and we always love you all. Want to elevate our conversation. We want our humanity to be placed back on us and to be given to others that we meet. Let's help the children. Let's help the homeless. Let's help our pets. Let's help all the others out here. Let's be the people that we know we can be with a heart. We love you all. KDIV 98.7, knowledge.
Diversity, inclusion, and variety.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Arthur and Evelyn, we're here. We love you. You take care and pass it on.
Expand your leadership footprint, folks.
There you go.
Okay.